Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. This is Chris here with Justin, and we have a special guest. We have been marching towards ProgPower USA coming in September of this year, and we have on the promoter of Day 2, which is going to be the Thursday night portion of the show, Milton Mendonca. Milton, welcome, and how are you this evening? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I see you woke up today and you chose war with the Mendoza thing, but that's okay.
Well, a good nickname
good, man. A little
always sticks.
Yeah. A little under the weather, but things are good. You know, as you said, we're getting closer and closer. We're 2 months away from the show, and this is when the butterflies really start hitting a little bit. You know, but things are good.
What do you like at this point in time? We're 2 months out. Like, what are you pretty much up to as far as this year's event goes? Like, what goes into it even this far out?
I think now is the time that we start getting everything, all of the details ironed out directly with the bands, like all of the technical advances. You know, we start getting their schedules in when they're flying in, when they're flying out. We start getting more into the specifics of the show, you know, going over requests, going over riders, hotels, all of that kind of stuff.
So this is where you start looking for the green M&Ms and stuff like that to make sure that it's only green M&Ms?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Luckily, this year, at least for my day, I can say that there hasn't been anything too crazy in terms of requests for both hospitality and for equipment or production. You know, knock on wood, so far it's been pretty manageable. And lucky, I have Camden Cruz from Seven Kingdoms, who incidentally are playing the show. But he's been also our stage manager for a few years now. And he does all of that technical advance for me. And he has everything, he has everything under control. He's amazing. So it's always good to rely on good people, you know, to work with you and to be there for you.
So before we kind of jump and do like a deep dive into this year's lineup and how it came together, why don't you tell everyone kind of how you started promoting shows in the first place and how you kind of made your way as to the Day 2 promoter for the fest?
I don't even know how it happened, to tell you the truth. Jokes aside, I started working in the industry. It was kind of like one thing leads to the other. You know, I started doing music journalism. You know, as a matter of fact, I think that's what I was doing when I met you, Justin, way back in the day. And from there, it went to, I did some PR, some publicity for some bands, for some record labels. And from that, I went into booking and management. That's when I started working with Klaus and with Lars at Instrumental at the time, and got pretty heavy into the booking thing. But, you know, it was challenging too because it was basically doing it all by myself. And, you know, when life happens, you get busy, and things got a little too busy for me to keep doing the booking thing with Infinity Concerts, which was my agency. And then I was I was at the peak of booking the tours, and I had helped Glenn out to iron out the Remedy Lane show for Pain Salvation back in 2014. Because I was their agent for the States at the time. And we started talking, and I think I kind of jokingly mentioned to Glenn, you know, if you want to do a Wednesday night show, we can get Pain Salvation as well. He's like, hey, all you, man, if you want to do it, I'm happy to have you come on board and join, which I did. And that was a great event. I'm sure you guys remember. It was a great show. And then it started with those 2 years upstairs in the smaller room until eventually I decided to join forces with Nathan and move it down to the big stage and all. So, yeah, it's been quite a ride. you know.
Do you have a particular year that was a favorite or just extra special for you for whatever reason that you promoted since you started?
Um, a particular year. Hmm. I mean, obviously the first year was kind of crazy because, there's all of that excitement and all of that. Uh, I don't know. I don't know if it's fear or anxiety or, you're just nervous because, um, you've never done it before. You have an idea how to do it and you have people on your side to help you make it work. But you're also kind of scared because, what if you fuck it up somehow? Um, so the first year was also cool because I noticed the tremendous amount of support that I had in terms of people in the scene, people in the industry, friends, the crew at the festival, which I was already a part of, not as a promoter though. Um, so that was really cool. It definitely left me with that. I want to do this again, and I want to do it more. And having the booking side of things, the experience in that, it kind of made it easier because you could play both sides a little bit. So that was one of them. I definitely think the year that we had Blind Guardian and Dragon Force as the headliners, that was a very special year too because it was Blind Guardian, and Dragon Force, and it was it was it was different in terms of working with the big names, but also they were just so great to work with, both of those bands. Like I remember the day that Dragon Force played, there was some sort of miscommunication between our crew and I think it was Spock's Beard who played right behind before them, and we were behind by like I don't know 45 minutes, and I went into Dragon Force's dressing room, sort of like expecting to get my ass chewed, Um, guys, we're running behind. I'm so sorry, and they were like, "Don't worry, man. Just keep us serving beers." Just keep bringing us beers, and then we'll be fine. And everybody was great to work with. So I think that year was very special.
And you started going to the fest, when we did in ProgPower 3, although I think I would only meet you a year or two after that.
Yeah,
What was it like transitioning? It's almost like the old story where the fan becomes the front man of the band, right? And this is kind
yeah,
of the same
yeah,
type of thing. What drew
yeah.
you to the fest in the first place? Cough, Angra, cough. And then ultimately, talk about the transition from fandom to promoter.
Yeah. So it's funny because so long story short, I think my family had just moved to the States maybe a year before or 2 years before. Uh, and Angra had gone through the breakup, with Andre and the other guys and the new lineup and the new album. And then when the new lineup started announcing the shows for their first, they announced their first live show in my city where I used to live in Brazil,
Hmm.
3 blocks away from home.
Oh, wow.
So I'm thinking, here I am. I'm living in the States now. My favorite band is playing, 2 blocks away from my former house, and I'm like, I don't know if I should be excited for my friends, if I should cry and get you know, in the bedroom and not leave for a few days. Um, and then I noticed that they announced this random festival in the States. And I think I was 17 at the time, and I was like, I gotta talk to my parents. I gotta go see them, and my parents were like, yeah, for sure. If you want to go with some friends, that's fine. Um, and then bought the tickets, got the traveling taken care of. And then, I don't know, 3 weeks later, they announced the show in Brooklyn at Lemoore.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, well, guess I'm seeing them twice. you know?
But and to be fair though, that first lineup was so stacked that I'm sure it wasn't
Yeah.
just Angra, and I'm
Oh,
sure you
for
would have
sure.
done the whole tour if you could.
For sure. Just the fact that Blind Guardian's first show in the States was also taking place that year. And I knew Gamma Ray, and a friend of mine had just gotten me into Pain of Salvation. And Ed Guy, you don't need to, no introductions needed there. Yeah, so it was cool, and much like with a lot of people that keep going to the festival all these years, you guys probably know the feeling of getting there, and just there was something about being there with those people. It was just something special. I think a lot of people remember certain moments in their lives, right? Whatever they might be, things that really stick with you and mark you in a way. And I remember exactly what it felt like when I got there. It was something so special. It was something so cool that I remember saying, I need to do this every year. I need to come back here. Right. And I know it's cliche, and I know that a lot of people have felt that way. And they say that this is what happens when you go to ProgPower. And that's exactly what happened when I went to ProgPower.
I vividly remember getting off the flight, getting to the hotel, and in the middle of the lobby, as I'm about to check in, I see a guy sitting there with a pink guitar, and I'm like, holy shit, it's Kiko Loureiro, and he's just sitting there, not plugged in, but just you can hear him playing, on the loose strings or what have you. And I said to myself, what is going on? Like
Justin walked right up to him and said, you'd be a great fit in Megadeth. And I thought that was really ballsy of him to say that, like, right to his face like that. That was.
See, now we know how Kiko ended up in Megadeth. It was all because of Justin.
Do you know that scene in Star Wars: The Force Awakens when Han Solo gets on the Millennium Falcon for the first time in however long, and he just says, "Chewie, we're home." That's how I feel every time I walk into center stage that first night of ProgPower. I think I even posted it on social media one year. It's like soon as I walked into that venue, and that's kind of I think what you were kind of getting at is that you just feel like you belong there. It's the sense of community, and now you're like, and now you're like one of the main cogs behind the whole thing. That's got to be a pretty awesome thing.
It's awesome. It's very special. It's, like I remember I just came across, just a few days ago, me and my group of friends who went that year. As a matter of fact, Justin, you mentioned you getting off the flight, going to the hotel. We didn't know any better, me and my friends. We went by Greyhound bus.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. So part of the memory, the whole ProgPower, it was an adventure. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It was
insane. Be like a 16-hour ride or something like that.
That's exactly what it was. I think it might have been longer. I think it might have been because we stopped in Richmond, and I had a childhood friend of mine from Brazil who was living in Richmond at the time, so we picked him up, so to speak, in Richmond, and then we stopped again in Charlotte, I want to say. I don't know. And when we got to Atlanta, we actually went to the hotel, but it was the wrong hotel because they had the same name, and we just went to, we think it's this one. Let's just go there.
That's all right. We've had bands find the wrong hotel, but I'll leave that story for another day entirely. That's funny.
So, but yeah, back to the whole. Yeah, it's kind of surreal sometimes when I really think about. I used to it was my vacation, and I think that's and to answer your question from before, I think that's the biggest change from a transition perspective. That used to be my vacation. That used to be the thing I looked forward to every single year because I knew I was going to have a hell of a time. And it's anything but a vacation now. we love what we do. I love what I do, and I can speak for everybody in the crew, I think. But the moment I touch down in Atlanta, I usually go, all right, 5 days. We just got to get through 5 days.
Right, right.
It's probably the most stressful week of the year by far. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Do you give yourself a moment or 2 moments or 3 moments to just step back into fan mode and just stand there and watch a band play and just kind of forget your duties for 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Oh, yes.
I feel like you kind of have to, or else.
And I have to give credit to Glenn on that, because, so Glenn has really taught me everything about the role of a promoter. I give him full credit. He is one of my closest friends, a mentor, everything, a partner. He told me one time, I think, I don't know if it was the first or the second year, maybe the first year. And he said, no matter how jaded you get, you have to take a moment and just appreciate it, because you have to be proud of the work you're doing, and you have to be proud of the fact that you're making this happen, that you took the risk, and he goes, and eventually you're going to book the bands you want to see, and you won't give a fuck about whether or not you're working. You're just going to sit there, and there's definitely been those sets where we're like, we tell the crew, guys, my phone's going off. If a fire happens in the back of the venue, I trust you that you're going to put it away and put it out, and that's it. So there's always, I can't say a full set, but yeah, there's always, I make it a point to enjoy it too. Also because I know that someday it will come to an end, so I might as well enjoy it too while I make it happen.
So let's kind of shift gears and talk about this year. I think you've got arguably the most well-rounded lineup that you've ever had, and that's saying something. Talk a little bit about what the fans can expect on September 7th, and specifically how the lineup came together and what went into the whole process, because I know just from conversations offline that it is a stressful but at the same time very exciting kind of formula that goes into it.
So I think the first thing that people can expect is that I'm going to be running around like a madman, like always, but it's part of it. So when I put together this lineup, and this is going back last year, right? Because we book over a year in advance. As a matter of fact, we're in the middle of booking 24 now. So this was the first time that the lineup that I envisioned for day 2 was the lineup that ended up getting booked. And it was just circumstantial that everybody was available, everybody was interested, etc. I really wanted to bring a little bit of a feel of those old ProgPowers from back in the day. Back when we only had Friday and Saturday, and it was only 5 bands. And Glenn really focused on 2 prog bands, 2 power bands, 1 wild card, if you would. And I wanted to kind of have that feeling again. I think I did that the year before as well. I think last year with Stratovarius and Pain of Salvation as the 2 main bands, I think I hit that pretty well. And this year I also wanted to take a different strategy, in the sense that I wanted to book the bands that, at least the top bands, the ones that are popular and are hot now, as opposed to a Strato who's been, around for 30 years, or Pain of Salvation, so on and so forth. So with that in mind, I started, and I always talk, and Glenn and I, we talk lineups year round, basically, And when we started discussing the plan, I knew that Beast in Black was going to be available, and I know that they have been growing significantly here in the States. Had to cancel ProgPower before, so I was pretty certain that I wanted them on the roster. I wasn't sure yet if they could pull off as a headliner, but clearly they can, right? Vola is a band that I think Glenn had approached in the past, and I believe they, if I recall correctly, maybe they didn't even get back to us. When he contacted them. So I approached their agent as well, which happens to be the same booking agent for Beast in Black, as a matter of fact. And almost immediately they're like, yeah, they're very interested, and I think we'll make this happen. So the first band I reached out for, or that I wanted, I will say, was the Halo Effect, because it's sort of like they came out right at the time that we're like starting to think of a roster for the following year, and I'm like, I love the single. I'm like, I want this band. I don't even want to listen to the rest of the album. I want them booked. So they were the first band I approached, and they were the last band to confirm, which I think it's kind of funny. So yeah, those are the top three. 0 Hour, when they announced that they were coming back with the new album with Eric back in the vocals, with Andreas on bass, I'm like, that seems like, the timing is kind of right to bring him back. I have to cater to some of the old school guys as well that have been to the festival, our regulars for 20 years, the prog guys. So that was very easy to deal with, to confirm as well. And Seven Kingdoms goes back to, the current hot bands that are growing, that are becoming popular. I mean, they're touring like crazy now. And, besides the fact that Camden is part of the crew, for many years they've been in my radar. And I said, you know what, I think finally it's time. I think they're at the point where they've never been better. I think the music shifted a lot too over the years, and I thought it was a good opportunity to put them on the show. And I think it helps both us having a younger, newer band, because maybe they will bring some new people to the show too, and also it helps them. It kind of it works sort of as it solidifies their status, I guess, as a band in the scene. So I'm pretty satisfied with the lineup. I think it's like you said, it's one of the most well-rounded I've had so far, and I think it'll be a great show.
I think in many ways you got a little bit, I don't want to say lucky, but I think that before long, I think the Halo Effect will start doing U.S. headlining tours on their own right.
Yeah.
Vola has already started doing U.S. headlining tours on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
And I'll go out on a limb. I think Beast in Black might be the next band that starts playing really big rooms throughout the country. I know they've done headlining tours, but I just think that they are about to break through huge, to the point where
100%.
You're getting them at the right time, because in a sense, if you don't have them in that, that moderate size room now, you may never get them because they may get too big.
I think they have the potential to be what Sabaton is now.
I agree with you.
And it's kind of the same situation with when Sabaton played the second time. Not the first time, because they were, I think, third of five, maybe. So I think you're right. I think they are just on the verge of potentially becoming, I'm not even going to say too big yet, but they're on their way. There are bands that
I agree
that we've had in the festival before that are probably beyond our budget now, to be completely honest. Or they can play Atlanta in a bigger room on their own, by themselves. So But it's testament to the festival's success too, I have to say, because a lot of these bands, I can think of, when Glenn had Nightwish for the first time, when he had Epica for the first time, when he had Sabaton, um, they got their shot in the States because of the festival. So it's just to be expected that these bands are going to be touring more and more and getting bigger and bigger, and eventually they outgrow the festival, and that's okay. It gives the festival a chance to just renew and building new bands like that. So
We had a question that came in from someone that they wanted to know, what do you think the hardest part is about being a show promoter? And would it be like the budget, finding the bands, the promotion aspect? What do you think is the most difficult aspect of putting the thing on?
I think the most difficult aspect, but also one that we've had to learn how to get over, is the fact that you can't please everybody. And at some point you realize that that's okay. And at some point you're like, you don't like the bands? Okay. You can't. It's become, I will say that it is hard to not take criticism to the festival personal. It's very hard because we work really hard at what we do and we're proud of what we do. And the moment you start taking things personal, the moment you stop taking things personal when they talk about something you put together, to me, that's the moment you start losing interest. So I hope I never get to the point where I don't care about criticism anymore, So it is hard, but it's manageable. Obviously, making the budget work has become probably the most difficult, challenging part now. Just because everything is so much more expensive than it was, 2 years ago, than last year even. So we're having to get really creative in terms of certain aspects of budgeting. Yeah, I think those are probably the two hardest parts right now.
Is there
but then when you're
a
there,
band that? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Chris. I was just going to say, but then when you're there and you're seeing the show happen and you're seeing the crowd going nuts, it's like, okay, it was all worth it. When you see it happening in front of you, you're like, all right, we did it. We still know what we're doing.
Is there a band that you really wanted to book that the window just passed and it became a thing where it was just like, this band's too big or too expensive or whatever? It's just that window, like we were just talking about, that Sabaton was once in and Beast in Black is in now. I remember Glenn at one point mentioning that he really wanted to get Volbeat, and he was so close to getting Volbeat and it didn't work out. Was there ever a situation like that for you, if there was a band you just wanted so bad, but it was just out of reach because it just wasn't wasn't fiscally possible?
Fiscally possible. I think, we talked about, and both Glenn and I talked about them. Sleep Token, 100%, the first band that comes to mind. There's also that other band from Canada, I think. I don't even remember their name now. So it's a band from
Rush.
Canada with a girl singing. They're a little bigger than Rush now. No, just kidding.
Oh, Spirit Box.
Spirit Box, thank you. Yeah, it's a band that would have fit the festival very well. And I remember saying to Glenn, hey, what about Spirit Box? And he's like, I think we lost. It's past our chance.
It's funny because Spirit Box comes out with their debut with a lot of buzz, and before you know it, they were playing 2 nights at Irving Plaza, which obviously we've been to countless times. So you're talking about putting 2,500 people over the course of a couple of nights in a room. And that actually pales in comparison to what Sleep Token did. Sleep Token has gone from a band that nobody's ever heard of to a band that's going to be playing arenas very soon. And I say that tongue in cheek, but not really, because they're turning into the next Ghost in terms of popularity. They are just blowing up at a rate I've never seen. And I have friends of friends that reach out to me and they're like, have you ever heard of Sleep Token? I'm like, and of course it just starts the conversation, but those are people that have never heard of Stradivarius and they've never heard of Angra, but they now know who Sleep Token is. It's incredible.
Another band that comes to mind, and it's a little, it would still fit ProgPower, I feel, but it's a little out there, is Polyphia.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they are fantastic.
They had my number one album of the year last year, in my opinion. And it just kind of blew my mind. I was having conversation with a bunch of friends who are not into metal, right? They have no idea about the bands that we listen to, that we work with. They're not really that deep into music. They're not big music consumers like we are. And they were like, dude, have you heard of this band Polyphia? They're so good. And I'm sitting there thinking, is this when I open that can of worms, or I just say, oh yeah, they're awesome?
Yeah.
And ultimately I went with, with the second option, because it was probably easier to just be like, yeah, they're really cool. That's awesome. You like them. and back in my mind, I'm thinking, should I? But I think in terms of becoming too big, Chris, those are probably some of the names. I can't speak for Glenn, obviously, but the Volbeat. I mean, he had Volbeat confirmed and announced for the festival, and they had to pull out because they had a bigger offer. And you can't really fault the band when that happens. They gotta go with what they need to do for their career.
And to their credit, it certainly worked out for them. So
yeah, for sure. There's definitely been bands that I wanted to book and it didn't work out, and they are no longer playing. The ones that got away, so to speak. But from a financial perspective, I think those three come to mind. Avantasia would probably be another one, but been there.
Hey,
done
you got
that
Avantasia. You just didn't get them at ProgPower.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's funny because I was just going to ask you a similar question in that I know people request bands for you to book all the time, and I'm sure there's been some real out there requests. And honestly, Avantasia and Arion were kind of the first two that popped into my head. But is there like an absolutely just batshit crazy request you've gotten that was just like somebody dead serious asked you to get like a Metallica or a Dream Theater or something like that?
It actually happens the other way around. Like, I've had people, like, because obviously we're getting emails from bands as well, and agents and managers and whatever, offering bands. But I've had people request, like, oh, you should get this band. They're a great cover band from Long Island, or things like that, So it's kind of like that, Chris, but it's on the other side of the fence, right? Like, they would probably just play for, dinner and drinks. And I'm like, probably, because, they're not exactly a band I would want to pay for.
not putting anyone in the seats, to say the least.
Right. It has to. It's not just about the band is really good. There has to be a reason. I can't. If I were to just book bands that were good, we'd have a 75-day festival. You know what I mean? There has to be. Unfortunately, things have gotten so expensive that there has to be a reason for a band to be booked, right? You can't just book it because they're a cool band, because they're nice people or whatever. We have to be more selective. But now, in terms of the bigger names, Yeah, you always see on Facebook people saying, have you ever had Megadeth or Anthrax or stuff like that? And yeah, I'd love to book those bands, but I'm not. We're not at that level. We're a 1,000 people festival,
Are there any
So
bands left at this point that you say to yourself they're kind of a bucket list for you to book? I'm talking about like realistic bands that you would kind of
hmm,
see yourself going after that you either haven't had or that you think are overdue to come back.
there are bucket list shows, I would say, because as you know, Prague Power does a lot of special, unique, one-off shows. Um, you know, album celebration or this or that. There, yes, there are definitely some shows by bands that have been at the festival. Maybe one of them is happening next year. We'll see. Um, but in terms of bands like first timers at the festival, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. Yeah, I can't think of anything. Also,
Well,
because I'm
how
probably
about as a talk, but then talk as a fan? Like I'm sure the bucket list is a lot smaller than it used to be, just because
uh,
now everyone seems to
hmm,
tour. Everyone plays the states. Is there anyone left? I know, Ariane aside, I know what's coming up for you, but like
yeah.
anything, like, is there like a top two or three left as the fan that you're like, I have to go see this band before it's too late? Because I think we all have the same regret when it comes to Andre Matos.
Yeah, he definitely falls into the ones that got away. Because, and I don't know if a lot of people know that, but we had the Shaman reunion confirmed as of, a few days before Andre passed away. Their manager had gotten in touch and said, it's looking good. I think we're just gonna, we had a verbal, I guess. Um, and I guess it really wasn't meant to be because, Glenn initially wanted Shaman back when Shaman came out. So you're talking ProgPower 4. And that didn't go anywhere. Then he announced Andre solo, right, in
Mm-hmm.
2010. And then the visa bullshit happened. And then I actually had discussed Andre for my second year for 2015 and had had many discussions directly with him. And he had a manager at the time that was kind of awful to deal with just because um, she wasn't very timely in terms of responding to emails and stuff. So that kind of died down as well. So there's at least like 3 or 4 times that it was a realistic possibility that didn't happen. Um, there was another reunion that was supposed to happen. Um, but I think I'm going to leave that story for Glenn to tell. I mean, I'm sure he has, uh, in which the vocalist passed away. And I think a lot of people know right away it's a band from the Pacific Northwest that was very, very close to happening. Oh man, now bucket list in terms of I don't think it's a bucket list necessarily. There are bands that I still want to see as a fan and that I'd love to work with, as a fan, like and as a promoter as well. I still want to work with the Ocean someday. I'm a big fan of them. The guys are really cool to work with. Their agent is really cool to work with. Unfortunately, it didn't work out last year, but I think we will eventually. I think it's a matter of when as opposed to if um, they come to mind. Yeah, I think it's more very specific shows. Like I'd like to have this band performing that album in its entirety, kind of thing. I probably would want to bring Ed Guy but I don't see that happening. I'd have to get over Glenn's dead body before, if an opportunity came up, I think it'd be his, and I have no chance.
And that's
You
more of
gotta
a time thing than a money thing, right?
you have to respect the hierarchy. You know what I mean? There are some bands that
Yeah.
I have to just kind of, just smile and say, "Go for it, dude." Time, I don't know. I don't know. When I think of Ed Guy now, I think of Sabotage and TSO. Is it worth their time doing a tour for 300-400 people every night, like their last tours in the States? Probably not. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's like not worth putting a pin in Avantasia to get Ed Guy to come back, and when Avantasia is such a success and a moneymaker for Tobias,
Yeah,
it's just
I really don't know what it is. I really don't know if it's a money thing. I really don't know if, you know, people move on, right? People, I think Toby said that in an interview recently. He's like, he's not the same person he was when he was writing Hellfire Club, and playing with Ed Guy. And as much as they're a great band and they were super fun, maybe they just don't want to do it anymore. And it sucks to hear that or to think of that as a fan, but you have to realize that you can't really force it, and it's just how it is. So, but now you got me thinking, like, who else would I want to bring to the festival? I truly can't really think of many bands.
Well,
you have to admit, like, if you've been going to the festival for as long as we have, we've been pretty spoiled. Like, a lot of bucket list items have been checked off over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to consider that there are new bands coming out, and some of these new bands are becoming more and more popular. And of course, I want to see them play. Of course, I want to work with them. But I don't know if they quite fall in the whole bucket list. I think one of my bucket list bands watching live, I just saw it with Justin a few weeks ago, when we went to see Emperor. Yeah. Well, again, Justin, based in conversation, I've never seen Metallica live.
Well, we're about 2 weeks away, and I know I owe you an answer on that, so I'll take that offline. But
yeah, that's fine.
And if you book Metallica for ProgPower, I'll just laugh at the guy who posts on Facebook, because I guess he finally got his wish.
He finally did it. Yeah.
So before we let you go, I just want to hear any last thoughts about this year, what the future holds, and I guess what can we expect as we have another few years to go with the fest.
Well, this year I think there's obviously, goes without saying, there are still some tickets left for day 2. I wish I wasn't saying this, but hey, here we are. It's how it is. I think every band is going to deliver, at least on day 2. I'm certain of it. And I think people that choose not to attend will be missing out. I mean, what else can I say, So as for this year, I'm excited. Things seem to be going well in terms of the pre-show, the advances, everything is going smooth so far, knock on wood. Yeah, we'll see what happens when we get there. As for the future, next year, as it stands right now, 2024, I have 2 bands confirmed for Thursday, with a verbal on a third. And like I said, maybe one of those special shows, maybe not, we'll see. I think it'll be really hard for people to complain in terms of this lineup is not good enough or this or that. I think I'm pretty proud of it. I'm pretty ecstatic about it, actually. And here we are 15 months ahead of next year's show, and I'm like, I kind of want to see that show already. I kind of want to make that happen. I kind of want to announce it. I can't wait to announce it. Just as I'm sure Glenn can't wait to announce his show.
Is there any chance you'll be able to announce your lineup at this year's ProgPower, or do you think it won't be finalized in time?
It's definitely been my goal this time around, and I am working. I have given myself the deadline that I want to make that happen, the goal. When I talk about it with Glenn, he's still like, you have time. You don't have to have the video and announce it at the show, but I would like to. It's really exciting to see people's reactions in real time. It really is one of the highlights of the weekend. It's watching
completely.
those damn videos. So, and especially if the headliner I'm talking to right now confirms, I really want to be there to see people react. But yeah, we'll see. It's looking good.
How can people find you or reach out if they, want to either ask questions or sponsor the show or anything like that?
Either on the festival, they can always send me an email directly to myself, or ask for my email on the festival Facebook or Instagram. I prefer to share that way instead of just put it on the festival Facebook page. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way. And, I'm in all socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Threads.
There you go.
The first Threads plug. There you go.
That's right. Yeah, see?
That's Redemption's favorite app now.
TikTok.
Oh, there you go. Milton on TikTok. You've heard it here first.
No. I said
Well,
not so much. Yeah.
We appreciate you joining us. We look forward to seeing you in, I guess, another 6 or so, 7, 8 weeks, something like that.
Don't say it like that, man.
I can't believe it.
It's a little too. It's a little too close.
It becomes real at that point. It all comes together though. So we appreciate the time. We look forward to seeing you. We encourage everyone out there, buy your tickets now, because I think that ticket sales often influence next year's lineup and budget and everything else. So buy your tickets, get out there and come support, because bands like this don't tour the States all that often, and certainly those openers, a band like 0 Hour, you're not going to get to see them anywhere else.
Or in a really good room with really good sound, and I think that's a big deal too. You want to go see Beast in Black in a little bar, before they get super big. Be my guest, but I promise we deliver. It's not like we're booking in a venue that's a bar with a pool table and arcade machine and warm beer kind of thing. We're so.
Well, I had said to Justin in our last 2 episodes ago, how excited I am to see Beast in Black play in that venue, because that venue is just such a great venue to see a band, and like it always sounds good. The crowd's always into it, and I think that just the way Sabaton, blew that stage up twice, I think Beast in Black's going to be very similar. So I'm really excited about specifically that they're playing in that venue.
I think so too. So there's a reason why the festival has always stayed at that venue, right? And I think you guys know by now that the quality is second to none. So, it's I don't know. It's worth going. I think I would still be going as a fan if it wasn't for becoming one of the co-promoters. So.
I wholeheartedly believe that to be true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anybody who listens to this podcast knows how much Justin and I love ProgPower, and we want all the success for you in the world, and we
Appreciate it.
right around this time, this is all we talk about for the next 2 months or so.
Yeah, it's like I said, and you guys know it's a very special event, and I just hope people don't take it for granted. I really hope that people don't take it for granted, because there's a few years left, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
On that subject, before we go, I'll leave with this, because we had one other question, and might as well. This seems like as good a time as any to ask it. Is there a possibility that ProgPower can continue after Glenn retires?
Oh boy, putting me on the spot, huh?
Yeah. I thought you got off light so far, so.
Is there a possibility? I mean, how can I answer this and A, not get in trouble, B, not build false expectations, and C,
probably by saying nothing, but I urge you to actually respond if possible.
So, Glenn's retiring after 25. For all intents and purposes, ProgPower is over in 2025. I have not announced that I'm retiring in 2025 or at ProgPower 25. So how's that for an answer?
It's the kind of vague answer we look from you for.
Joking aside, there's been a conversation, and that's about all I can say right now, because there is nothing.
I think people are just looking for that little shred of hope that it might go on. So I think if you keep that hope alive, that's all anybody's really asking for.
Yeah, that door isn't closed, I guess. I'm not going to say it's wide open and you can see through the door, but it's not closed. And, I would like to see it continue. I would not like to think that it will never happen again. I would like to see it continue, and, whether or not it will, I don't know, but it's also not my place to say. But there is, there's been a conversation that has happened, and that door isn't closed.
Very good. We'll let you go with that. Thank you again for joining the Metal Exchange, and we look forward to maybe having this same chat next year when it comes to the next year's lineup. Absolutely.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it, and all the best to you guys with the podcast, which is so cool to see. So,
cheers.
Thanks.
Yep. Have a good one, guys. Yep. Of course.